Daniel Anderson, a once powerful and wealthy businessman, had everything a man could dream of: an adoring wife, a lively young son, and a future full of promise. But in a single tragic moment, his world was shattered. Left grieving the loss of his wife and the disappearance of his beloved son, Daniel's life spiraled into darkness. Years passed, but the wounds remained, as deep and painful as ever. With no family to inherit his legacy, Daniel found solace in philanthropy, giving generously to those in need. Yet his heart ached for the son he lost, and an heir to continue his life's work. 15 years later, Daniel's search for meaning led him to an orphanage, where he encountered a young man named Alex. With a gentle smile and a heart full of kindness, Alex reminded Daniel of everything he had lost. As they grew closer, Daniel's suspicions began to stir. Could Alex be the son he had mourned for all these years? But lurking in the shadows was Daniel's estranged brother, Robert, with a dark secret that could destroy everything. As the truth slowly unravels, Daniel must confront not just his past, but a treachery so deep that it threatens to tear apart the remnants of his family. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. A once powerful mogul, now facing the grim reality of infertility, found himself standing on the threshold of an orphanage, desperate to fill the aching void left by his lost family. As he entered the institution, his heart heavy with longing, his eyes fell upon a young man whose striking resemblance to his deceased son was like a ghostly apparition. Daniel Anderson, a man of towering influence and success, was returning from a lavish business dinner with his beloved wife, Melissa, and their cherished 8-year-old son, Ethan. Outside, the Los Angeles sky unleashed a torrent of rain, turning the roads into slick, perilous paths. Daniel, acutely aware of the priceless lives in his care, gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. Melissa sat beside him, her gentle smile radiating warmth as she lovingly squeezed his hand. In the back seat, little Ethan, exhausted from a day brimming with laughter and joy, lay in peaceful slumber. Without warning, a massive truck veered into their lane. Panic gripped Daniel as he desperately tried to swerve out of harm's way, but the rain-soaked pavement betrayed him, sending the car into a deadly skid. The last thing he heard was the sickening crunch of metal colliding and Melissa's heart-wrenching screams. When Daniel awoke in the sterile confines of a hospital 3 days later, his world had been obliterated. The news shattered him. Melissa had died instantly, and Ethan had vanished without a trace. Despite a relentless search by the authorities, the boy was never found. Crushed under the unbearable weight of grief and guilt, Daniel spiraled into a deep, suffocating depression. He withdrew from the world, locking himself away in his opulent mansion, pushing away even his devoted younger brother, Robert, who tirelessly sought to pull him from the abyss of despair. As if the tragedy weren't enough, weeks later, Daniel was dealt another devastating blow. The injuries from the crash had left him sterile. The door to fatherhood was slammed shut forever. With his heart shattered and his soul adrift, Daniel made a decision that would change the course of his life. If fate had so cruelly robbed him of his family, he would devote the rest of his days to aiding those less fortunate. He began pouring his wealth into charitable causes, funding the construction of schools and hospitals in America's most destitute regions. Yet, despite his philanthropic triumphs, a gnawing emptiness persisted within him. Daniel yearned for an heir, someone who could inherit not just his fortune but his passion for uplifting the downtrodden. 15 long years had passed since that tragic night. Daniel Anderson, now a weathered 55-year-old, had become a beacon of generosity, revered across the nation. The jet-black hair of his youth had turned silver, bestowing upon him an air of gravitas and wisdom. His eyes, though clouded with sorrow, still burned with a fierce determination whenever he visited one of the numerous projects he had nurtured. On a sweltering summer day, Daniel arrived at the Hope and Life Orphanage, situated on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It was his 4th visit to an orphanage that month, driven by his relentless quest to find an heir who could carry forward his legacy. As he wandered through the orphanage's corridors, a particular sight arrested his attention. There, sitting on the floor surrounded by a group of enraptured children, was a young man of about 23 years. He was reading to them with such genuine warmth and enthusiasm that it made Daniel pause. This young man, named Alex, had brown hair and green eyes that sparkled with kindness. His voice, though soft, was full of conviction, and his animated gestures brought the story to life for his captivated audience. Intrigued, Daniel approached the orphanage director, Mrs. Peterson, a kind-hearted woman in her 60s whose eyes still gleamed with the compassion of a lifetime spent helping others. "Who is that young man?" Daniel asked, unable to look away from Alex. Mrs. Peterson beamed with pride. "That's Alex. He's been here since he was a child, about 15 years ago. We never learned who his parents were, but from the moment he arrived, he showed a heart of gold, always caring for the younger children, always smiling no matter what." An unexplainable connection stirred within Daniel as he watched Alex. There was something profoundly familiar and comforting in the way the young man carried himself, in his gentle demeanor. "And now he works here?" Daniel inquired, his curiosity deepening. "Yes, Mr. Anderson. When he turned 18, he chose to stay on as a volunteer. He studies social work in the mornings and spends his afternoons here, giving back to the place he considers home." Mrs. Peterson's words echoed in Daniel's heart. A deep, almost spiritual impulse urged him to learn more about this extraordinary young man. "Could I speak with him?" Daniel asked, his voice tinged with a hope he hadn't felt in years. Mrs. Peterson nodded, calling Alex over. The young man approached with a shy yet sincere smile, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "Alex, this is Mr. Daniel Anderson, a prominent businessman and philanthropist who is visiting us today." Alex extended his hand with respect. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Anderson. I've heard a lot about you and all the good you've done for the community." As Daniel grasped Alex's hand, a sense of destiny washed over him. The once cold and empty man felt, for the first time in years, the faint flicker of hope, as if perhaps, just perhaps, this encounter was the beginning of something far greater than he could have ever imagined. As Daniel's hand clasped Alex's, a powerful surge of emotion overwhelmed him, sending shivers down his spine. The intensity of the moment was magnified by Alex's emerald eyes that mirrored Melissa's so vividly it took Daniel's breath away. Those eyes held a blend of admiration and curiosity that stirred something deep within him. Struggling to maintain his composure, Daniel responded, "The pleasure is truly mine, Alex. I've heard remarkable things about your unwavering dedication to this place. It's truly commendable, especially for someone as young as you." Alex's cheeks flushed with modesty. "I'm just doing my best to give back a fraction of what this place has given me. It became my sanctuary when I needed one the most." A pang of sorrow struck Daniel as his thoughts turned to his lost son, Ethan. If only Ethan had survived, would he have shared the same noble heart and purpose? The weight of that unanswerable question constricted Daniel's throat, leaving him momentarily speechless. In an attempt to break the sudden silence, Daniel found himself asking, "Would you be willing to share more about your journey, Alex? I'd love to hear your story if you have a moment." The words surprised him. This newfound interest in a stranger's life was both foreign and compelling. Alex glanced at Mrs. Peterson, who gave an encouraging nod. "Certainly, Mr. Anderson. It would be my honor." As they strolled toward a secluded spot to talk, neither of them could have predicted the profound impact that simple conversation would have on their futures. The forces of fate, which had once kept them apart, were now conspiring to weave their destinies together once more. With each word, each shared thought, Daniel found himself increasingly drawn to the young man before him. There was something eerily familiar about Alex's mannerisms, his way of speaking, a sense of déjà vu that gnawed at the edges of Daniel's mind. As Alex recounted his life at the orphanage, his academic pursuits, and his aspirations to aid other children in need, Daniel listened with rapt attention. And you never uncovered anything about your biological family? Daniel asked, his voice laced with caution. Alex shook his head gently. No, Mr. Anderson. The only thing I know is that I was discovered near here, disoriented and injured. I have no memory of my life before that day. The doctors believed it was due to the trauma of the accident. Daniel's pulse quickened. Accident? What kind of accident? Alex's expression darkened slightly as he replied, I don't know the specifics, but they told me it seemed I had been in a car crash. I had cuts and bruises consistent with that, but no one ever came looking for me. Over time, this place became my home. Daniel's thoughts raced as he pieced together the puzzle, the timing, Alex's age, the accident. Could it be possible? Could this young man standing before him be Ethan, the son he had believed lost forever? Desperately trying to maintain his calm, Daniel proposed, Alex, would you allow me to hire someone to delve into your past, to see if we can uncover any clues about your family? Alex looked at him with wide eyes, taken aback by the offer. You would do that for me, Mr. Anderson. But why? Daniel's smile was tinged with sadness. Let's just say that your story touched me deeply. And who knows, perhaps I can help you find the answers you've been searching for. What Daniel couldn't foresee was that someone else was equally determined to uncover Alex's past, but with far more sinister intentions. In the shadows, Robert Anderson, Daniel's younger brother, had been silently observing the unfolding events. Consumed by envy over his brother's success and wealth, Robert saw in Alex an opportunity, a means to seize the family fortune for himself. He had been monitoring Daniel's every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That very night, as Daniel prepared to retire for the evening, the phone rang. It was Robert. I heard you've been visiting orphanages, Daniel. Looking for an heir, perhaps. Robert's tone was casual, almost too casual. Instinctively, Daniel responded with caution. I'm just trying to help, Robert. You know how much this means to me. Of course, Robert replied smoothly. I was just thinking that maybe adoption could be an option worth considering for you. A cold chill ran down Daniel's spine. He sensed that Robert's sudden interest was far from innocent. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for the suggestion, Daniel replied tersely before hanging up. But the uneasy feeling lingered. He knew his brother well enough to suspect that Robert was up to something. Determined to protect Alex and uncover the truth, Daniel resolved to proceed with even greater caution in his investigation. Meanwhile, back in his opulent apartment, Robert allowed himself a sly smile. He was more informed than he had let on. 15 years earlier, Robert had attempted to kidnap Ethan after the accident, planning to use the boy as leverage to extort money from Daniel. But his scheme had gone awry when a vigilant nurse, witnessing the attempted abduction, had intervened and whisked the child away to safety at the orphanage. Now, as the past threatened to resurface, Robert was ready to exploit the situation to his advantage, no matter the cost. Robert had kept a vigilant watch on Alex for years, biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to exploit the young man for his selfish gains. Now that Daniel seemed to have taken a genuine interest in Alex, Robert knew his opportunity had finally arrived. A sinister smile curled on his lips as he whispered to himself, "Soon, dear brother, you'll uncover the truth, but by then, it will be too late. The Anderson fortune will be mine, and there will be nothing you can do about it." What Robert couldn't foresee, however, was the flaw in his carefully crafted plan. An even greater secret lay hidden, one that would soon come to light and shake the very foundation of the Anderson family. In the days that followed, Daniel found himself caught in an emotional maelstrom. The mere thought that Alex could be his long-lost son consumed his every waking moment. To unravel the truth, he enlisted the help of James Reynolds, the most renowned private investigator in the country. Daniel's heart was gripped by both hope and fear as he awaited news, unable to shake the possibility that Alex might indeed be his son, Ethan. Meanwhile, Alex remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, continuing his daily routines at the orphanage with the same unwavering dedication. One warm afternoon, as Alex played with the children in the orphanage's yard, he noticed a stranger standing on the sidewalk, watching him intently. Unnerved yet curious, Alex approached the fence. The man was none other than Robert Anderson, though Alex had no idea who he was. "Can I help you with something, sir?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with caution. Robert flashed a smile that was as insincere as it was calculated. "I was just admiring the wonderful work you all do here," he replied smoothly. "I'm Robert Anderson, Daniel's brother. I understand you and my brother have become quite friendly." Alex nodded, still on guard. "Mr. Anderson has been very kind to me. Are you also interested in supporting the orphanage?" Robert's eyes gleamed with thinly veiled cunning. "Indeed, I am," he said, his tone dripping with false warmth. "I was hoping we could have a private chat. I have a proposition that might interest you." Before Alex could respond, Mrs. Peterson's voice called out from the orphanage entrance. "Alex, Mr. Anderson is here to see you." Robert's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "Another time, then, young man. Take care of yourself," he muttered, turning on his heel and walking away just as Daniel arrived. Daniel's heart sank as he noticed his brother's retreating figure. His unease deepened when he saw the puzzled expression on Alex's face. "Alex, what did my brother want?" Daniel asked, trying to mask his growing anxiety. Sensing the tension in Daniel's voice, Alex answered carefully. "He just introduced himself and mentioned that he wanted to talk to me privately. He said he had a proposal." Daniel's brow furrowed with concern. He knew all too well that Robert's intentions were never benign. "Alex, please be wary of Robert. He's not someone you should trust blindly." Alex nodded, but his curiosity was piqued. "I understand, Mr. Anderson, but may I ask why?" "After all, he's your brother." Daniel let out a heavy sigh, the weight of old memories pressing down on him. "It's a long and complicated story, Alex. Perhaps one day I'll share it with you. For now, just promise me you'll be cautious." "I promise," Alex replied, though his mind buzzed with questions about the dark secrets that seemed to haunt the Anderson family. As Alex continued to ponder the enigmatic warnings, James Reynolds worked relentlessly to uncover the truth about Alex's past. He combed through dusty hospital records, tracked down former orphanage employees, and followed every lead, no matter how faint. Then, one late evening, as he pored over old police reports, James stumbled upon something that made his pulse quicken: a report detailing an attempted kidnapping on the night of the Anderson family's tragic accident. The report mentioned a courageous nurse who had intervened to save an injured boy from a man who had tried to abduct him. Thrilled by the breakthrough, James immediately contacted Daniel. "Mr. Anderson, I believe I found something significant. I need to see you right away." Daniel, who had barely slept for days, agreed to meet James at his office that very night. As he waited, his mind raced with anticipation and dread. Could it be possible that after all these years, he had finally found his son? When James arrived and presented the report, Daniel felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. "Are you certain about this, James? Could this boy be?" Daniel's voice trembled with emotion. "I can't say with absolute certainty, Mr. Anderson," James replied cautiously. "But the timelines match. The description of the boy aligns with what we know about Alex, and I found some compelling information. The nurse who saved the boy, Maria Gomez, left the hospital shortly after the incident and moved to a small village outside the city. I've managed to track her down." Daniel shot to his feet, his determination renewed. "We need to speak with her, James. I need to know the truth, once and for all." As they prepared to confront the secrets of the past, neither man could have predicted the magnitude of what they were about to uncover: truths that would not only reveal Alex's identity, but also expose the dark machinations lurking within the Anderson family, leading to a confrontation that would change all their lives forever. Robert had kept a vigilant watch on Alex for years, biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to exploit the young man for his selfish gains. Now that Daniel seemed to have taken a genuine interest in Alex, Robert knew his opportunity had finally arrived. A sinister smile curled on his lips as he whispered to himself, "Soon, dear brother, you'll uncover the truth, but by then, it will be too late. The Anderson fortune will be mine, and there will be nothing you can do about it." What Robert couldn't foresee, however, was the flaw in his carefully crafted plan. An even greater secret lay hidden, one that would soon come to light and shake the very foundation of the Anderson family. In the days that followed, Daniel found himself caught in an emotional maelstrom. The mere thought that Alex could be his long-lost son consumed his every waking moment. To unravel the truth, he enlisted the help of James Reynolds, the most renowned private investigator in the country. Daniel's heart was gripped by both hope and fear as he awaited news, unable to shake the possibility that Alex might indeed be his son Ethan. Meanwhile, Alex remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, continuing his daily routines at the orphanage with the same unwavering dedication. One warm afternoon, as Alex played with the children in the orphanage's yard, he noticed a stranger standing on the sidewalk, watching him intently. Unnerved yet curious, Alex approached the fence. The man was none other than Robert Anderson, though Alex had no idea who he was. "Can I help you with something, sir?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with caution. Robert flashed a smile that was as insincere as it was calculated. "I was just admiring the wonderful work you all do here," he replied smoothly. "I'm Robert Anderson, Daniel's brother. I understand you and my brother have become quite friendly." Alex nodded, still on guard. "Mr. Anderson has been very kind to me. Are you also interested in supporting the orphanage?" Robert's eyes gleamed with thinly veiled cunning. "Indeed, I am," he said, his tone dripping with false warmth. "I was hoping we could have a private chat. I have a proposition that might interest you." Before Alex could respond, Mrs. Peterson's voice called out from the orphanage entrance. "Alex, Mr. Anderson is here to see you." Robert's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "Another time, then, young man. Take care of yourself," he muttered, turning on his heel and walking away just as Daniel arrived. Daniel's heart sank as he noticed his brother's retreating figure. His unease deepened when he saw the puzzled expression on Alex's face. "Alex, what did my brother want?" Daniel asked, trying to mask his growing anxiety. Sensing the tension in Daniel's voice, Alex answered carefully. "He just introduced himself and mentioned that he wanted to talk to me privately. He said he had a proposal." Daniel's brow furrowed with concern. He knew all too well that Robert's intentions were never benign. "Alex, please be wary of Robert. He's not someone you should trust blindly." Alex nodded, but his curiosity was piqued. "I understand, Mr. Anderson, but may I ask why?" "After all, he's your brother." Daniel let out a heavy sigh, the weight of old memories pressing down on him. "It's a long and complicated story, Alex. Perhaps one day I'll share it with you. For now, just promise me you'll be cautious." "I promise," Alex replied, though his mind buzzed with questions about the dark secrets that seemed to haunt the Anderson family. As Alex continued to ponder the enigmatic warnings, James Reynolds worked relentlessly to uncover the truth about Alex's past. He combed through dusty hospital records, tracked down former orphanage employees, and followed every lead, no matter how faint. Then, one late evening, as he pored over old police reports, James stumbled upon something that made his pulse quicken: a report detailing an attempted kidnapping on the night of the Anderson family's tragic accident. The report mentioned a courageous nurse who had intervened to save an injured boy from a man who had tried to abduct him. Thrilled by the breakthrough, James immediately contacted Daniel. "Mr. Anderson, I believe I found something significant. I need to see you right away." Daniel, who had barely slept for days, agreed to meet James at his office that very night. As he waited, his mind raced with anticipation and dread. Could it be possible that after all these years, he had finally found his son? When James arrived and presented the report, Daniel felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. "Are you certain about this, James? Could this boy be Daniel's?" voice trembled with emotion. "I can't say with absolute certainty," Mr. Anderson James replied cautiously. "But the timelines match. The description of the boy aligns with what we know about Alex, and I've found some compelling information. The nurse who saved the boy, Maria Gomez, left the hospital shortly after the incident and moved to a small village outside the city. I've managed to track her down." Daniel shot to his feet, his determination renewed. "We need to speak with her, James. I need to know the truth, once and for all." As they prepared to confront the secrets of the past, neither man could have predicted the magnitude of what they were about to uncover, truths that would not only reveal Alex's identity, but also expose the dark machinations lurking within the Anderson family, leading to a confrontation that would change all their lives forever. Daniel's hands trembled violently as he grasped the fragile piece of paper, his heart pounding with a chaotic mix of emotions. An overwhelming sense of joy surged through him at the realization that his beloved son was still alive. Yet this joy was quickly eclipsed by the searing anger he felt toward his brother's unfathomable betrayal. And amidst it all, a fragile glimmer of hope flickered in his heart. Could Melissa, too, have somehow survived? His voice, choked with emotion, finally broke the silence. "Thank you, Maria," he murmured, his gratitude heavy with the weight of the truth she had just unveiled. "Thank you for saving my son, and for revealing everything. But now, I must go. I need to find Melissa. I need to confront Robert." As Daniel rushed out of Maria's modest home, a sense of impending doom clung to him like a shadow. He knew that this was the fight of his life, the fight to reunite his shattered family and unmask his brother's deceit. But first, he needed undeniable proof. He needed to see Melissa with his own eyes. His heart raced as he drove, each mile dragging him closer to the hospital where Melissa was said to be hidden away. Unbeknownst to him, Robert had already caught wind of his every move and was preparing to play his final treacherous hand. The fate of the Anderson family now hung by the thinnest of threads. The hours ahead would either bring them back together or sever their bonds forever, buried beneath the lies and secrets that had festered for far too long. Daniel drove like a man possessed, his mind a maelstrom of emotions: desperate hope, gut-wrenching fear, seething anger, and an unyielding love for the family he had once lost. Each emotion tore at him, pulling him in different directions, yet all leading to the same desperate goal: to find Melissa. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Alex paced restlessly. His brief conversation with Robert, coupled with Daniel's ominous warning, had left him with an unsettling feeling that he just couldn't shake. He decided to clear his mind with a walk, oblivious to the fact that this innocent decision would place him at the epicenter of the storm about to erupt. Robert, on the other hand, had been tipped off by a well-placed informant about Daniel's visit to Maria Gomez. Time was slipping through his fingers, and he knew he had to act swiftly if he wanted to keep his iron grip on the situation. At the hospital, Daniel burst through the doors of the reception area, the paper with Maria's cryptic information clenched tightly in his trembling fist. "I need to see a patient," he demanded, his voice thick with emotion. "Her name is Maria Sanchez." The receptionist, taken aback by Daniel's intensity, quickly typed the name into her computer. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out patient information without proper authorization." Daniel felt his anger rising, about to boil over, when suddenly a voice he never thought he'd hear again stopped him cold. "He has my authorization." The words were soft, almost a whisper, but they struck Daniel like a bolt of lightning. Slowly, he turned around, his breath catching in his throat. There, standing in the dimly lit hallway, supported by a walker, but with a gaze that burned with life, was Melissa. "Melissa!" Daniel gasped, his voice breaking as tears streamed down his face. "You're alive. You're here." Overcome with emotion, he rushed to her side, embracing her as if he feared she might vanish if he let go. It was a delicate yet desperate hug, a physical manifestation of the years of pain, love, and longing he had bottled up. Melissa, equally overwhelmed, wrapped her arms around him, tears of her own flowing freely. "Daniel, my love," she whispered between sobs. "You found me. After all these years, you finally found me." As they held each other, lost in the moment, Alex found himself wandering near the orphanage. Suddenly, a sleek black car skidded to a stop beside him. The door swung open, and out stepped Robert Anderson, his smile more of a predatory sneer. "Alex, what a coincidence," Robert said smoothly, his eyes cold and calculating. "I was just looking for you. Come with me, there's something you need to see." Remembering Daniel's warning, Alex instinctively took a step back. "I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, but I can't go with you." "I don't know you." Robert's smile disappeared, replaced by a menacing scowl. "You misunderstand, boy. This isn't a request." Before Alex could even think to run, two large men emerged from the car and grabbed him. He struggled fiercely, but they were too strong. Within seconds, he was shoved into the back seat, the car speeding off into the night. Back at the hospital, Daniel and Melissa had moved to a private room. Tears mingled with whispered words as they recounted the tragic events of the last 15 years. "How is this even possible?" Daniel asked, his voice thick with disbelief. "They told me you had died in that crash." Melissa shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with a pain that mirrored his. "No, Daniel, it was Robert. He planned everything. The crash wasn't an accident, it was an assassination attempt." Daniel felt his blood turn to ice. "What do you mean, Melissa? What are you saying?" "Robert wanted everything: your company, your wealth. He knew you were too clever to fall into his traps, so he decided to eliminate you and your family. When the crash didn't kill us, he panicked. He had me kept here in a coma all these years to make you think I was dead." As her words sank in, Daniel's world tilted on its axis. The brother he had once trusted more than anyone else had been behind it all. And now, the reckoning was upon them all. The clock was ticking, and every second mattered. Would Daniel be able to reunite his family and expose Robert's villainy, or would the darkness of betrayal engulf them for good? Daniel's heart ached as he clutched Melissa's hand, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and fear. "But you woke up," he whispered, his eyes searching hers for reassurance. Melissa nodded slowly, her expression a blend of exhaustion and determination. "Yes, a year ago." The doctors were stunned. It was a miracle. "But Robert, he found out. He threatened me, Daniel. He said if I ever tried to reach you or told anyone the truth, he would ensure something terrible happened to Ethan." At the mention of their son's name, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "Ethan," he repeated softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Melissa, Ethan is alive. He's been alive this whole time. He's Alex, the young man from the orphanage. I just found out." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with both joy and terror. Melissa's eyes filled with tears, her heart racing with a mix of hope and dread. "Ethan is alive? Oh God, Daniel, we have to find him. If Robert knows, he won't stop. He'll do anything to keep the truth buried." A cold shiver ran down Daniel's spine as he realized the urgency of the situation. His hand shook as he pulled out his phone and frantically dialed James Reynolds' number. "James, listen to me," Daniel said, his voice tight with fear. "Get to the orphanage right now. Make sure Alex Ethan is safe," but the world had already conspired against them. By the time James arrived at the orphanage, the boy was gone. Mrs. Peterson, pale and shaken, could barely speak as she explained that Alex had gone for a walk and never returned. The realization hit Daniel like a blow. Robert had taken their son. Far from the safety of the orphanage, in a dilapidated house on the edge of the city, Robert paced the floor, his mind unraveling with each passing second. In the center of the room, bound to a chair, Alex stared at his captor with wide, frightened eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Alex demanded, his voice quivering with fear and confusion as he struggled against the ropes digging into his skin. Robert's eyes gleamed with a twisted desperation. "You don't understand, do you?" He spat, his voice laced with bitterness. "You're the key to everything. You're the only obstacle between me and the Anderson fortune." Alex's confusion deepened as Robert's words sliced through the air. "What are you talking about? I'm just an orphan, nothing more," he protested, his voice barely above a whisper. Robert laughed, a harsh, joyless sound that echoed through the empty house. "Oh, the irony," he sneered. "You, the rightful heir to one of the largest fortunes in the country, raised in an orphanage like some nobody. You're not just an orphan, Alex. You're Ethan Anderson, Daniel and Melissa's son." The revelation struck Alex like a tidal wave, leaving him breathless and reeling. No, that's impossible," he stammered, his world collapsing around him. But Robert's expression was cold and unyielding. "It's true," he said, his voice deadly calm. "And now that your father is so close to uncovering the truth, I have no choice but to take drastic measures." Back at the hospital, Daniel and Melissa were preparing to leave, their hearts pounding with fear and urgency. Despite the doctor's pleas, Melissa refused to stay another minute. "Our son needs us, Daniel," she said fiercely, her voice trembling with resolve. "I've been away from him for 15 long years. I won't waste another second." Just as they reached the door, James Reynolds burst into the room, his face pale and drawn. "Mr. Anderson, it's Alex, he's gone. And there's more. We found evidence in Robert's office documents proving he orchestrated the accident, faked Mrs. Anderson's death, and has been embezzling funds from the company for years." Daniel's fury erupted like a volcano. "That lying snake," he roared, his voice thick with rage. "Where is he? Where is he keeping my son?" James quickly laid out their only lead. "A witness saw a black car leaving the orphanage. We traced it to an abandoned property outside the city." Without hesitation, Daniel, Melissa, and James raced out, alerting the police on their way. Time was running out, and every second felt like a lifetime. In the abandoned house, Robert's nerves were fraying as the seconds ticked by. He knew it wouldn't be long before they found him. Desperation gnawed at him, and in a final frantic bid to save himself, he turned to Alex. "Listen, Ethan," he said, his voice softening into something almost pleading. "I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. Think about it. With your father's fortune, we could do incredible things. We could help so many kids like you. You just have to work with me." But Alex's eyes, once filled with fear, now burned with defiance. "I'll never help someone who has done so much harm to my family," he said, his voice steady with resolve. Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air, drawing closer. Panic seized Robert, and in a flash he pulled out a gun, pointing it directly at Alex. "I'm sorry, kid," he said, his voice shaking, "but you're leaving me no choice." The door burst open with a deafening crash. Daniel and Melissa charged into the room, the police close behind. "Alex," Melissa cried, her voice breaking as she saw her son for the first time in 15 years. Tears streamed down her face, and she barely restrained herself from running to him. Daniel, eyes blazing with fury, stepped in front of his family, his voice cold as steel. "Drop the gun, Robert," he ordered, his body tense with the determination to protect his family at all costs. Robert, cornered and desperate, looked around wildly, searching for a way out. In a last frantic move, he swung the gun toward Daniel. "You did this to me, brother," he screamed, his voice ragged with anger. "You were always the golden child, the successful one. What about me? What was left for me?" But before he could pull the trigger, Alex, with a surge of adrenaline, managed to free himself and lunged at Robert. The two struggled fiercely, the gun clattering to the floor. The police swarmed in, quickly subduing Robert and placing him in handcuffs. As the chaos subsided, Daniel and Melissa ran to their son, their hearts overflowing with relief and joy. For the first time in years, the Anderson family stood together, united once more, ready to rebuild the future that had been stolen from them. My son, Melissa sobbed, her voice thick with emotion, as she enveloped Alex in a desperate embrace, holding him as if she could make up for all the lost years in that one moment. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them and pulling his family close. "We're together now," he whispered, his voice breaking. "No one will ever tear us apart again." Alex clung to his parents, overwhelmed by the surge of emotions and the staggering truths that had unraveled his world. His mind still struggled to grasp the reality of what had happened, but deep in his heart, he knew he had finally found where he belonged. As the police escorted Robert away, the Anderson family stepped out of that dark house, united and resolute, determined to reclaim the years that had been stolen from them. They knew the path ahead would be long and filled with challenges, wounds that needed healing, stories that needed sharing, but they also knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together as a family. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, marking the end of a harrowing chapter and the beginning of a new journey filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. In the days that followed the dramatic rescue, the Anderson family's life was a whirlwind of emotions. Alex, grappling with the truth of his identity, moved into the family mansion, where Daniel and Melissa poured every ounce of their love into creating a welcoming home for their newly found son. But the transition was anything but easy. The first nights were especially hard. Haunted by nightmares of his kidnapping, Alex would wake up drenched in sweat, screaming in terror. Each time, Melissa, driven by a maternal instinct that had been buried for 15 long years, would rush to his side, holding him close and whispering soothing words. "I'm here, my love," she would murmur, her heart aching as she cradled him. "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." Daniel, on the other hand, wrestled with his demons and unbearable guilt that gnawed at him day and night. He couldn't shake the feeling that he should have uncovered the truth sooner, that he had failed his family by trusting Robert for so long. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, the weight of these unspoken fears finally surfaced. Alex, his voice barely above a whisper, broke the silence that had hung over them like a cloud. "How can I ever fit into this family?" he asked, his eyes brimming with uncertainty. "I've lived my entire life as an orphan. I don't know how to be an Anderson." Daniel's heart broke at his son's words. He set his fork down gently and leaned forward, his gaze steady and filled with love. "Alex Ethan," he began, his voice firm yet tender, "you don't need to be anyone other than who you are. From the moment we met you at the orphanage, long before we knew you were our son, we were already proud of the person you are." Melissa reached across the table, taking Alex's hand in hers. "Your father is right," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's not your name or the wealth that makes you an Anderson. It's your compassion, your kindness, and your desire to help others. That's what truly matters." Tears welled up in Alex's eyes as he struggled to speak, a lump forming in his throat. "But what if I let you down?" he asked, his voice shaking. Daniel shook his head, his expression softening. "That's impossible," he replied gently. "The only way you could ever disappoint us is if you stopped being true to yourself, and we know that won't happen. You're already everything we could have hoped for in a son." Gradually, the walls Alex had built around his heart began to crumble. He opened up, sharing stories of his life at the orphanage, and his dreams of one day helping other children who felt as lost as he once did. Daniel and Melissa listened intently, filled with admiration for the strength and resilience their son had shown, despite all he had endured. As the Anderson family worked to rebuild their lives, the case against Robert moved forward. The evidence against him was damning, an inescapable mountain of proof that left no doubt of his guilt. Soon he would face trial for his crimes: attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, and betrayal of the worst kind. Despite the deep wounds caused by Robert's treachery, Daniel knew what he had to do. One night, as they sat together in the quiet of their home, he turned to Melissa, his voice resolute. "I have to testify against him," he said, his tone unwavering. "It's the only way to bring justice for you, for Ethan, and for all the lives he's hurt with his greed." The day of the trial arrived, and the Anderson family stood together, united and strong. Alex, though nervous, was determined to play his part. When his turn came to testify, he faced Robert with a courage that belied his young age. "For years I believed I had no family," Alex began, his voice clear and steady. "But even then, I understood what love and loyalty meant, thanks to the people who raised me at the orphanage. What you did, betraying your own family, is something I can never comprehend." For the first time, a flicker of regret crossed Robert's face. He looked down, unable to meet Alex's gaze. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached its verdict guilty on all counts. As Robert was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he paused to look at Daniel one last time. "I'm sorry, brother," he whispered, his voice filled with a sorrow that had come too late. "I truly am." Daniel nodded slightly, his emotions a tangled web of sadness and relief. The chapter on pain and betrayal was finally closing. With the trial behind them, the Anderson family could finally turn their attention to the future, to healing, to rebuilding, to creating the life they had once dreamed of. Inspired by Alex's passion for helping others, Daniel and Melissa decided to establish a foundation dedicated to supporting orphaned children and families in need. "We want to give others the chance to reunite with their loved ones, just as we did," Melissa explained at the foundation's inaugural gala, her voice filled with hope. As they stood together on that stage, Alex felt a warmth in his heart that he had never known before. For the first time in his life, he truly felt like he belonged. He was no longer just Alex, the orphan, or Ethan, the heir. He was both, and he was so much more. As the flash of cameras lit up the night, Daniel leaned in close to his family, whispering words that carried the weight of all they had endured. "We made it. We're together," Melissa, ever the optimist, nudged him playfully. "Oh, Daniel, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a new chapter," Alex, standing between them, nodded with a bright smile, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and determination. "And it's going to be the best chapter yet," he added confidently. As the car pulled away, carrying the Anderson family into the unknown, one thing was clear: their story, one of love, forgiveness, and redemption, was far from over. This once fractured family, now stronger than ever, held within them a universal truth that love, when it's pure and steadfast, can overcome any obstacle and heal even the deepest of wounds. A year had passed since that fateful night when the Anderson family was reunited. The mansion, which had once echoed with loneliness, was now brimming with warmth and joy. Alex, who had chosen to keep his first name while embracing the Anderson surname, had transitioned remarkably well into his new life. On a bright and peaceful Sunday morning, Daniel found his son in the garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and a stack of documents. "Working on a Sunday, are we?" Daniel teased, a proud smile on his face. Alex looked up, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Dad, I think I found the perfect spot for the new community center for the foundation." Daniel sat down beside his son, scanning the plans laid out before him. "It looks ideal. Why don't we bring this up with your mom over breakfast?" he suggested. As they walked back to the house, Daniel couldn't help but reflect on how much their lives had transformed. The Anderson Foundation, born from Alex's deep desire to give back and support other children who had faced similar hardships, had become a shared mission that united the family even more. Inside, Melissa was seated in the dining room, engrossed in emails on her tablet. The moment she saw Daniel and Alex enter, her face lit up with a smile. "My two favorite men," she greeted warmly, kissing them both on the cheek. "What's got you both so excited this early?" Alex eagerly explained his vision for the new community center, and soon the three of them were engaged in an animated discussion, brainstorming ways to further their mission of helping families in need. Their lively conversation was suddenly interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Moments later, Mrs. Peterson, the former director of the orphanage, who now worked closely with the Anderson Foundation, entered the room, a look of barely contained excitement on her face. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice trembling with anticipation, "but there's something you need to see." She handed Daniel an envelope. He opened it carefully, pulling out a letter. As his eyes scanned the page, his expression shifted from curiosity to shock. "It's from the Department of Justice," he announced, his voice trembling slightly. "They've reviewed Robert's case and have granted him the opportunity for rehabilitation and community service under strict supervision." The room fell silent, the weight of the news settling heavily over them. Melissa was the first to speak, her voice a delicate balance of concern and cautious hope. "What exactly does that mean?" she asked, her eyes searching Daniel's for answers. Daniel continued reading aloud. "It says that due to good behavior and genuine remorse, Robert will be allowed to work in rehabilitation programs for ex-convicts. He's also requested our approval to participate in some of the Anderson Foundation's projects as part of his reintegration process." All eyes turned to Alex, who sat quietly, processing the information. His mind raced with conflicting emotions: anger, fear, compassion, and uncertainty. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. "I'm not sure what to think," he admitted, his voice wavering. "Part of me wants to give him a chance, to believe he's changed. But another part of me is terrified of what might happen if we let him back into our lives." Mrs. Peterson, ever the voice of wisdom, offered her perspective. "This could be an opportunity," she suggested gently. "Not just for Robert, but for all of you. It could be a chance for true healing, for your family to finally move forward without the shadow of the past hanging over you." Daniel looked to Melissa and Alex, knowing this decision would affect them all. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice filled with both concern and hope. "This is something we need to decide together." After a long, contemplative pause, Alex spoke again, his voice steady with conviction. "All my life at the orphanage, I was taught about the importance of forgiveness and second chances. I've always believed in that, even when it was hard. It wouldn't be right to deny someone in my own family that same opportunity, no matter how much he's hurt us." A wave of pride surged through Daniel as he listened to his son's words. "Then it's settled," he said, a sense of calm washing over him. "We'll give Robert this chance, but we'll do it with our eyes wide open, and we'll make sure that the foundation and our family remain protected." As the Anderson family moved forward, they knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they had each other. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, guided by the lessons they had learned about love, forgiveness, and the power of new beginnings. The family exchanged uncertain glances, a mix of hope and fear clouding their hearts. With heavy hearts, they agreed that Robert could contribute to the Foundation's projects, but with strict oversight and no direct involvement with the beneficiaries, at least not until he proved himself worthy. The weeks crawled by until the fateful day arrived when Robert was to set foot in the Anderson Foundation facilities. The atmosphere was thick with tension as he walked in, flanked by a solemn parole officer. Robert, now a frailer figure with strands of gray threading through his once youthful hair, bore little resemblance to the prideful man he had once been. His eyes, once gleaming with ambition, were now weighed down by guilt and remorse. "Daniel, Melissa, Alex," he stammered, his voice trembling with the weight of unspoken apologies. "I don't even know where to begin. Saying I'm sorry feels so pitifully small compared to the damage I've done." Daniel took a step forward, his expression a blend of caution and resolve. "Robert, rebuilding trust is going to be a long, hard journey. The wounds you inflicted run deep, but we're willing to offer you this chance. Don't let us down." Tears welled up in Robert's eyes as he nodded fervently. "I swear I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." The months that followed were a test of will for everyone involved. Robert threw himself into his work at the foundation, tackling everything from mundane administrative tasks to the creative development of new initiatives. Slowly, his relentless dedication and genuine remorse began to thaw the icy walls that had formed between him and his family. One afternoon, as Alex supervised the construction of a new community center, Robert approached him with an air of hesitancy. "Alex," he began softly, "I know my advice might be the last thing you want, but I've been going over the building plans, and I think there's a way we could significantly improve its energy efficiency." Alex paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but then he nodded. "Go on, I'm listening." As Robert laid out his idea, Alex found himself unexpectedly impressed. The plan was nothing short of ingenious. They spent the rest of the day collaborating, and for the first time, Alex caught a glimpse of the uncle he had always wished for. Later that evening, during a family dinner, Alex recounted the day's events with a mixture of surprise and cautious optimism. "I think Robert is changing," he admitted. "Today, I saw a side of him I never knew existed." Daniel and Melissa exchanged looks that spoke of both surprise and a deep, unspoken relief. It was a sign that healing was beginning to take root. As time went on, the Anderson Foundation flourished, expanding its reach and touching countless lives. Robert, having completed his period of supervision, gradually became an invaluable member of the team, channeling his intelligence and skills into causes that mattered, leaving his selfish past behind. 5 years after that pivotal moment, the Anderson family hosted a grand fundraising gala to celebrate the foundation's remarkable achievements. As Daniel, Melissa, and Alex took to the stage, a wave of emotion swept over the audience. 5 years ago, Daniel began, his voice thick with emotion. "Our family was shattered, torn apart by tragedy and betrayal. Today we stand here not just as a reunited family, but as part of a much larger family, one that includes every single person whose life has been touched by this foundation," Melissa continued, her voice filled with warmth and wisdom. "We've learned that forgiveness and compassion are powerful enough to heal even the deepest wounds. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, and the love of family can overcome any obstacle." Alex stepped forward, his voice trembling with the intensity of his feelings. "Growing up, I often felt like I had no family. But now I see that my family is bigger than I ever imagined. It includes every child we help, every family we support, and yes, even those who have hurt us but chose to seek redemption." From the back of the room, Robert watched through tear-filled eyes, overwhelmed with gratitude for the second chance he had been given. The gala was a triumph, raising enough money to extend the foundation's programs nationwide. Yet beyond the financial success, it was a testament to the enduring power of love, forgiveness, and the human spirit's capacity for transformation. As the Anderson family drove home that night, Daniel looked around at Melissa, the wife he thought he had lost forever, at Alex, the son who had miraculously come back into his life, and even at Robert, the brother who had finally found his way back to the family. A profound sense of gratitude washed over him for the unexpected turns life had taken. "You know," Daniel said, his voice filled with quiet contentment, "I think I can finally say our story has a happy ending." Melissa nudged him playfully, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, Daniel, this isn't the end at all." "It's just the start of a new chapter," Alex nodded in agreement, his eyes alight with hope and determination. "And I have a feeling it's going to be the best chapter yet." As we come to the end of this incredible story of transformation, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family, we're left with so much to reflect on. What have you learned from this journey? Perhaps it's the power of forgiveness, the strength that comes from facing your past, or the hope that even the most broken relationships can heal with time and effort. Whatever it may be, we'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments below one lesson you've learned from this story and how you plan to apply it in your own life. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories and life lessons. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.